If you've looked up stuff on the internet about GameStop, you probably have noticed they have kind of a bad reputation for their consumer support. And a lot of times people, when they go into GameStop, will report basically being harassed by the people who work there. From what I understand, they have to sell like a certain number, well, they're supposed to sell a certain number of like a special edition or a certain game that they're supposed to try to get people to buy. Personally, though, I haven't had too many bad experiences with this. I think it's because the GameStop that I normally go to has a lot of customers, so they probably sell what they're supposed to pretty easily. They don't have to hassle people too much. But I've definitely heard some really bad stories about people getting basically harassed by the people who work at GameStop when they're just trying to buy a game. It's only really happened once to me, but 2 days ago I witnessed, I should say, a very interesting argument between a customer and someone who works at the GameStop that I usually go to. Now, I don't know the customer, I don't really know the person who works there too well, but I'm just going to tell you what my thoughts on this argument were and how it went down, and what I found interesting about it. So I walk in probably 25 to 20 minutes right before closing, right? And, no, I noticed they're, like, both standing there kind of looking at each other, like they're both annoyed at each other, but they're not saying anything yet. So I'm just like, okay, there are a couple of people there, there's, like, some parents and, like, their kids or whatever. And, this guy's about my age. So I'm like, okay, whatever, I don't know what they're doing. So I just walk to the back, I'm looking for some, old PS2 game that I've been trying to find for a while. And all of a sudden they start arguing. You know, the lady who worked at GameStop, she's probably a little bit older than me, maybe like 20 or something. Anyway, she was like, look, I told you I'm not gonna sell you this game. And then he responds something along the lines of, but look, I have my ID. I know yesterday you wouldn't sell the game to me, but I have my ID now, I didn't have it then. And the argument starts off that way. I didn't pay too much attention at first. I figured it was just someone who was maybe like 16 and trying to buy an M-rated game, which you have to be 17 to buy. I thought that was all to it. But, they kept on arguing, and I began to take more interest in it because, he seems like he's actually a gamer. And any gamer would know in the United States that a 16-year-old can't buy an M-rated game. You have to have an ID that says you're 17 or older. So it seems like I was beginning to think that he must know this, And the lady who works there never said that, like, he was too young or anything. She's just like, look, we have the right to refuse anyone's service. So at this point, I'm like, that's kind of interesting. What's going on here? They're having a pretty big argument if she's actually refusing to sell him a game. That's kind of weird. I mean, normally GameStop wants to sell as many games as they can, so what's up with this? What's the guy doing that's so bad? Anyway, as I listened to more of their argument, it turns out that he had been there the day before, trying to buy a certain game, I don't know what it was. She wouldn't sell it to him because he didn't have his ID, which seems pretty normal to me. I mean, how many 16, 17-year-olds carry around their ID with them all the time? Probably not too many. So he got one of his friends to buy the game, and from what I understand, his friend walked outside and handed him the game. So, it's kind of circumventing the system, but it's perfectly legal, You're allowed to buy an M-rated game and then give it to someone younger than that, So, I didn't see a problem with that, but apparently he came back the very next day trying to buy the game that his friend had just given him the day before. So she found that really weird, and she kept on saying, like, okay, why do you want to buy this game again? But honestly, at this point I began to kind of take a side in the argument. I didn't say anything, but I was thinking to myself, like, okay, well, if he wants to buy the game again, it's not your business. He has good money. He has an ID now, which I assume says he's old enough to buy the game. I mean, he's not so stupid that he would walk in there with an ID that shows he's too young to buy the game. So he went home, got his ID, came back, and was like, look, I have my ID. Sell me the game. And she wouldn't sell him the game. So at this point, I'm like, okay, what logical reason could there possibly be to refuse selling him the game? He wasn't being that disruptive. I mean, he got kinda angry at her, but he wasn't like cussing at her or anything. So it began to seem like she was just paranoid about him buying a game that his friend gave him the day before. And in fact, at one point, he kept on saying, look, I want to talk to the manager. You know, because he wasn't getting anywhere with her. And she was like, manager's not here, he's coming tomorrow, I told you that before. So he's like, alright, I'll talk to the manager tomorrow. And, you know, she said, look, I've got to get to these other customers. And he's like, alright, I'll wait for all these other customers to go by. And then she gets really angry because he won't leave. And she's like, look, I'll call security. And I'm like, at this point I kind of chuckled to myself in the back. Because I'm like, okay, what security does GameStop have? Are you telling me that they're like guards waiting in the back room? I mean, come on. GameStop does not have security. And it's not like they're in a mall or anything. Alright, they're just in a shopping center. So it's like, okay, really, you're gonna call security? Come on. Anyway. So it was just a really amusing argument. Eventually he did leave, like, 5 minutes before closing. I didn't find the game I wanted, but I just kinda decided to hang out there to listen to the argument. And he said something along the lines of he'd be back the next day to talk to the manager. And he said, like, he had been there before, and different people claimed to be the manager. I don't know, he seemed really annoyed about the day before. So, I mean, to be fair, I don't know how he behaved the first time that he came in before I was there. Maybe he did something really bad, and that's why they were refusing him service. But he didn't seem like anyone who would do something really stupid, you know? He doesn't seem like someone who would cuss out the people. At first I thought maybe he stole something, but no. No, they never mentioned anything about that. So it's kind of weird, you know, if someone wants to buy a game, you know, and they have an ID, then how is it your business whether they have a copy of the game already? In fact, the more I thought about it, the more stupid it seemed, because maybe his friend bought the game, and then, like, loaned it to him for a day or something so he could try it out before he bought it, you know? I mean, there are a million possibilities of why he might want a second copy of the game. So I don't know what was going on that made her so paranoid about selling him a game for the second time. Or actually the first time. You know? It just seems really stupid, but it does kind of fit with things that I've heard before. Because I've heard all these horrible stories about what happens at GameStop, you know? No, I haven't seen too many bad cases of of basically harassing customers. The only time anything bad ever happened to me was, there was this one guy who was trying to sell me, like, the special edition of Batman Arkham Asylum. And I just wanted the normal edition. But he told me, like, dude, but the special edition comes with the Joker Challenge rooms on the PS3. Now, luckily, you know, I go to gaming sites enough that I knew that the normal edition also came with that. So I was like, okay, dude, the normal edition has that too. He's like, yeah, you're right. He just kind of left. You know, so they definitely pull some tricks to try to get people to buy things, but this is the only time I've ever seen them try to not let someone buy something. You know? And, you know, he was twisting her words, too, in the argument that I saw. You know. He actually said that, she told him it was a bar. And then she said, no, I never said it was I never said it was a bar. I said it was like a bar where you need an ID to buy the product. Which is true. Alright. But he had an ID, so I don't see what the problem could possibly have been. If he was too young, it seems like she would have said, look, you're too young to buy the game. But she never said anything like that. The only reason that she ever gave for refusing to sell him the game was that his friend had given him the game the day before. Which doesn't make any sense. So, the only reason I'm telling this story, really, is because it's an example of a problem that I've heard about in the video game industry, but I haven't seen too much of myself. But I'm interested in your stories, mostly. I've already told my story. I've repeated myself a little bit, too, because I'm bad at that. But I want to hear your story, too, in the comments or in a video response or whatever. Like, have you had any especially bad experiences at GameStop? Or have you seen bad experiences, too? So, for upcoming videos, for subscribers, I've got some stuff coming up that I'm working on. I'm going to be making a couple videos of Chris. If you're one of my kind of older subscribers, you probably know who Chris is. He's the guy I made like the Assassin's Creed review with, SOCOM Confrontation review, and we're doing something that I think is going to be pretty fun. I'm going to edit some stuff. I'm going to talk about the Supreme Court's decision on banning video games, which is great news for all of us. And that's it. I'll probably be making another video either today or tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. And please share any stories, any horror stories that you have about GameStop, because it's always interesting to hear other people's bad luck.